Hello, welcome to Creating Portland. I'm your host, Pearson Kunz, and on this podcast, I'll be interviewing progressive creators who are using their art to shape the culture of our city and beyond. I hope you enjoy this episode of Creating Portland. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. We are here with another awesome guest, and his name is Ajai Tripathi, and he's an actor, director, educator, and playwright who has worked with many theater organizations across the greater Portland area. An education director with Teatro Milagro, an education consultant with Northwest Children's Theater and School, and administrative team member with PDX Playwrights. He works in order to rewrite the myths and create greater diversity, inclusivity, and accessibility inside Portland arts institutions. Welcome to the podcast, Ajai.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you. A lot of these themes here in your biography are what we've been exploring throughout this whole podcast, so I want to get into it even more. And yeah, let's just start with the big, broad question, which is just how are you, Ajai, through your art, creating Portland and the greater Portland area? Because I know you've worked with some theaters too outside of that.
Sure. I think I'm helping create Portland by living it, and I'm helping create Portland by reaching out to the children and connecting to the youth. As a teaching artist and an educator, it's really important to me that we all take our responsibility in creating our worlds together, and that's a big part of it is sharing the idea of knowing that your voice has power and knowing that everybody's voice has individual power, and our imaginations and our creativity is a miraculous thing that can help us create the worlds around us. So we're all creating Portland together. So yes. As an educator with...
Sorry, say it more.
Oh, no. As an educator with Teatro Milagro, I know I've gone to all sorts of different schools, and we've had workshops, creative workshops where we use theater as a tool to be able to express ourselves and to find our own creative expression.
Yes, and actually Inside Scoop is Ajai has been in my personal theater classroom at my school, and can you just tell the people what that is? What creating in sort of the last year has looked like for you as a theater educator specifically? How is it different?
Yeah, well, I've always been trained in personal education methodology, popular education methodology, which is very, very much involved. You know, you get in a circle, you go around the circle and you share the physical space, and theater classes really have always kind of fed off of the energy of sharing a physical space with each other. And that's kind of been changed in the past year because of necessity and safety. And taking out that, sharing the same air, sharing the same physicality is really finding ways to connect with our students, connect with each other, connect with our fellow performers through the virtual formats that we all have. So it's been quite different in that way. But there's some advantages too. You get to screen share visual images that you couldn't before. When we're creating a virtual play, you can kind of take that more cinematic aspect in order to tell the story in a different way, in a more visual way. So there's definitely advantages to it too. So yeah, it's been a very, very different experience all around, but a great learning experience, I think.
Totally. And I think it ended up working out better than I expected almost to be. I don't know if it's just the adaptability of you and your team or the adaptability of theater people in general to just make it work with what we have to create with. Yeah, so exciting to see you creating in this time. Is there anything you're going to take with you as you keep creating from this sort of educational online space? I know that's something I've been thinking about as a teacher, sort of leaving the online world and going back into the classroom since you do so much educational theater.
Yeah, I think just that embracing the technology is a wonderful thing. We have it at our disposal. I've always been a little bit of a Luddite in my teaching, and we're sharing stories. We're in a circle. That's all we really need, and that's true too. But uh, to have visual resources, to have video resources to share. It's another method of informing, and as you know, everybody learns in different ways. So some of those methods I think could work even better in reaching students.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, okay, so aside from your educational work, you're an actor, you're a director, you're a playwright. Can you tell us what kind of pieces you're interested in working with, maybe normally in a non-pandemic sense, and then maybe now as well? What themes are you exploring? What work are you doing in that kind of a space?
Well, as you know, with all the that's been happening uh, lately, with a lot of things coming to light for mainstream America, with coming to terms with our racial history. Um, to me, I think it's really, really important as artists to embrace the whole of humanity and
Mm-hmm.
to acknowledge all of that history and to incorporate that in the art and the stories we share with each other. So in that way, there's a lot of great organizations um, uh, like the Accountability Project that are holding theater companies and theater establishments accountable for practices because theater, much like Portland, much like Oregon, is a very very white heavy industry and population. So to allow the space for inclusivity to open it up, to open our doors to all sorts of different perspectives and giving those people voices and positions of power um, and also a creative power within that is really really has always been really important to me. But now it feels like people are actually listening a
Mm-hmm.
little bit harder, and to me that goes directly to the art too. So artistically, what I'm exploring is I wrote in my bio rewrite the myths.
Mm.
Wax on like Joseph Campbell a little bit. To me, myths are very, very important. Myths are our shared dreams, our collective dream that we all share with each other, and myths are important for self-actualizing ourselves to be the people that we are meant to be. Um, and the myths that we oftentimes hear and have grown up with are from a singular perspective. As in the academic level of theater, it comes from the Greeks and
Mm-hmm.
and from one little corner of the world, and it has value. But I want to broaden that. I want it to be opened up to all of the perspectives that have always been there. So when I think about rewriting the myths, I'm exploring play ideas. When I'm looking at the Greek stories, even Dionysus, I wrote a short piece about Dionysus, the Greek god of theater and wine, and he, he's always been a great figure in terms of gender exploration. But also, one of the stories about him that really intrigued me was from Nonnus, the Dionysiaca, a Roman poet, where he goes to India in order to convert people and make war with the Indians
Mm.
to convert them to their gods. So I kind of wanted to rewrite that story in a way that that included the Indian perspective in that as well. So when
Mm.
Dionysus goes there, he is actually woken up um, to the perspective of finding his escape from his own selfish ego and his own godhood, so where he can expand his mind to accepting other cultures. And in my story, that's where theater comes from. Um, theater comes from a ritual of it's a ritual of lies. It's a ritual of making things up. It's a ritual
Interesting.
of accepting, of playing with time, of playing with characters,
Hmm.
of stepping outside of what we accept as reality. So when Dionysus is able to expand outside of his mindset, in my version of the myth, then it allows the ritual of theater to happen. So maybe that's how it really happened.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, who's to say? Wow, yeah, that is such an interesting. I've never heard that perspective on theater, a ritual of lies. What a hot take. Um, Absolutely, and I think too in theater and just art in general, we have this idea that themes and myths are like universal in a way, just because they've been so ubiquitous. And it's there isn't really that questioning of where that universal story or that universal myth came from. And so I like that you are sort of turning that on its head and making it truly universal and accessible to different people other than just descendants of these Greeks or these like Western ideas around the hero and these Western ideas around what a good story is or who the center of the story should be.
Who has to
Hello? Hello?
You're back.
Great, that was the last thing I said, and then you guys blacked out too. Okay, we'll edit that out. I have literally no idea what happened. I say we just keep on chugging. Oh, what's happening? Oh, okay. All right. Stand by, stand by, stand by. Okay, it feels okay now. Are we okay? Okay, let's just keep going. Edit that out. Quick
Yeah.
pause, and then I'll jump back in. Do you have anything to say on my last point, Ajay, or should I jump back into the next section?
Uh, yeah, I could keep going on
Yeah,
on that
you
track.
bring us back in whenever you're ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just that learning about theater, the Western perspective has been so dominant in it. Uh, so I've actually had to, go out of my way to learn from the perspective of my own culture and feeling out like the Natya Shastra, for example, and I feel like a lot of companies in Portland are coming around uh, to to finding the value in those different perspectives. I recently I did acting coaching on a young adult version of A Midsummer Night's Dream, where that used a lot of Bharatnatyam dancing from classical Indian dance and culture, and it's just a to me that was so valuable, and it really inspired me to think about um, even the concept of the way the Indian boy is used in the story of the Midsummer Night's Dream. It's kind of a voiceless figure. I wrote another piece after that that attempts to give that Indian boy a voice as well. And just in embracing Shakespeare, there's always been a kind of a block, I think, for a lot of actors of color when it comes to embracing Shakespeare. And I've always found wonderful artists of color, actors of color, performers of color doing Shakespeare that have inspired me. And I think it's really important that we don't accept those blocks. We don't
Mm.
accept that because you come from a certain nationality, because your skin has a certain pigment, then you cannot portray certain characters from this classical form.
Mm. Yes, I love challenging that and I love opening that up to everyone. That's so exciting. Um, okay, well, let's zoom out then. We sort of already started getting there when we're talking about other theater companies accepting these different stories, but what do you think is really working about Portland art making right now and creation right now in this city? And then what do you think could improve? What areas do we need to continue to work toward?
Yeah, I think that it comes to being open. It comes to opening the institutions up to the communities that it serves. There's no reason for us to be all segregated in different neighborhoods and different socioeconomic standings and different races. Uh, our artistic institutions should be opening the doors to the communities. And if the people won't come to the theater, then take the theater out to the communities, which is
Mm.
one thing that I've always appreciated about Teatro Milagro. The touring company is going directly into schools and taking their shows directly to the students there. So I think that really works. I think I think community engagement is should be a top priority for every theater organization. And the more theaters get on board with that, I think the more successful they will be in Portland. And Portland is just wonderful in the way that it has so much cultural diversity. Maybe not ethnic diversity, but there's so many different little fringe theaters. And I can like just think about like speculative drama or theater vertigo or imago, different forms of art uh, that is very experimental, very exploratory. Pete Theater Ensemble, very uh, avant-garde, and willing to take artistic chances and artistic risks. And I've always been very attracted to the smaller fringe theater companies in this town, and there's so many of those. Um, the On the flip side, I think they all feel kind of separate from each other.
Mm.
They're all kind of their own islands sometimes. A lot of these organizations, including um, some that I've worked for, and and I think a lot of the institutions in Portland theater, some of the problems I found is in the past, and maybe this is changing, but is just the feeling that it feels like it's closed off, like it's
Mm.
kind of its own island unto itself, and it's really hard to break into that community. And I understand it because it needs to establish its place in order to try to be sustainable,
Mm.
because theater is very hard to make sustainable. Theater is like very not sustainable in a lot of ways. Um, just from a financial perspective. So it's very difficult for a lot of people, I think, to really make a full time career in theater, which is why you see, performers that are educators, performers that work in customer service,
Mm.
um, and people who work in all different avenues of the theater as well, just to make the ends meet. So I understand, when you have that, when you have something that you can sustain, you want to keep it, and you want to keep it the same for as long as possible. And
Right.
it feels risky to try to open it up and to take different chances and new chances and letting other people in. But I think. But but I think ultimately, at the end of the day, it would make the organization stronger to just be open
Mm.
to change.
And what is that? Yes, I'm just like riveted by what you're saying. How, other than the financial roadblocks, what is this hesitancy to being open? What, I guess, how do we keep those doors open in a way that is financially sustainable? Because I think that's one of the major sort of, I guess, I don't know if excuse is the right word, but like excuses is, well, we need to bring the money and we need to keep it the same or else we can't stay alive, period. And there's no possibility of being more inclusive, of having more openness. But then how do we sort of bridge that gap then? If it's still, we're still, as far as we know, we're still going to be operating and making theater in a capitalist city and world. So then what does that kind of look like for you, or how have you seen that working?
Yeah, that's a great question. In my What I think is that if that if you build the structure for it and you open up that structure, uh, that allowing more people into it in order to, maybe you're cycling through a different team of residency artists, or you're recycling through a different a creative team or design team. Um, just expanding it. It has to do with expanding capacity and
Hmm.
expanding capital within that capacity, because ultimately, I think there's more value in a diversity of ideas and an inclusion of a greater pool of people than there is in kind of recycling the same old tropes over and over again, and even the same old people over and over again. Those people can still, thrive. Maybe we can trade in another organizations. Maybe
Hmm.
we could work together better. Maybe I'll take maybe uh, maybe this design team can come work for this theater company, and we could trade a design team. Maybe we could tour to different programs. So maybe the answer is working better together
Mm.
in order to sustain us all, so we can all lift each other up.
Yes, I love
I'm just
that.
thinking as I'm speaking. So
Yes. Well, no, that sounds like a great idea. And I think that is, yeah, I think that is the key to it, is the intentionality behind sharing that. And you said in what you were saying is this value in diversity of ideas. And when we sort of our primary source of value is finances and is current, like literal currency, it's hard to justify the value in diversity in the same way. But I think there is this moment right now where people are really buying into diversity and are really pushing for making more diverse spaces, especially in theater and especially in the arts. So I guess also on the point of sustainability, what do you think is going to be the key to sustaining this moment, this momentum, this kind of, like, I would just hate for all of this excitement and like these new people in these awesome positions and all of these new voices now that are sort of popping up and becoming leaders in the community to not have the same support long term.
mhm. Yeah, I think
And I know that's a
is
huge question and not what we
yeah.
talked about before, so no pressure. But yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are, especially as someone who works for a theater company who is especially diverse and especially dedicated to including sustainable, different voices in a sustainable way.
Yeah, I think it has to be a long term commitment. It can't just be it can't be a performative act or um, just trying to check a box off. It has to be a continuing dialogue. It has to be a continuing conversation, uh, because what's not going to go away is the increasing ethnic diversity, the increasing
Right.
cultural diversity. That won't just dry up, right? What could potentially dry up is funders' interest, or a board's interest, thinking that it's not a financially viable path, or thinking that it's too controversial or too conflicting. Um, but but to really just it's digging down deep and doing the soul work, right? It's really just understanding that this is an art form that in its core is dedicated to the humanities, and it's dedicated to uh, of goodness, and even though I and truth, and even though I said it's a myth, it's a ritual based off lies. Within those lies, I find there's uh, ultimately a myth is a lie about the truth. In my, to be contradictory there,
Ooh.
but it's the truth of the matter is that the value of a society, um, and the ethics of a society is measured by how the marginalized are treated,
Mm.
how the people who don't always have a voice in the matter are treated, and for theater to be true to, I think, its ultimate values, which is to the humanities, it needs to speak to those people, and it needs to bring those people up. So I think it goes to the same answer. It to connect with the communities. to really make those connections and to walk the walk behind that as well, and
Mm-hmm.
not just say it, but to do it.
Absolutely. And have you come up in your career? I'm just curious. Have you observed any sort of pushback or any, like you were describing, the controversy of it being too much or funders pulling because of more diverse voices? Has that been something in your experience? Have you seen other companies overcoming that? What is, how, like, who can we learn from in this space?
Well, I talked a little bit about I mean, I have like literally heard people say that, well, nowadays with Shakespeare, they'll always cast a person of color in the roles, and to me, and it's like because it's like this white resentment around it,
Mm-hmm.
like we're gonna they're losing their roles because of it,
Mm.
and and I just had to speak up. I said, well, are you saying that if a person of color wants to act in Shakespeare, they're not allowed to do this?
Yeah.
So they not audition, and they kind of was like, but it's not like like it's about historical accuracy or something. And I said, well, they didn't have electric lights. I mean,
Right.
in Shakespeare's time, they didn't have women
Right.
actors in Shakespeare's time. Should we go back to that for historical accuracy? And that kind of hopefully made them think about it a little bit. So there's always these little voices here and there. I mean, maybe uh, that can be that can kind of throw you off a little bit and make you think, like, give you the impression that you're trying to be in a place where you don't belong.
Mm.
And I really just I really just want to push back against that. Um, I know in an institution I wrote a children's show about Frida Kahlo, um, and and it it's was presented in a very very um, uh, innocent way of looking at it from a childlike perspective, but it covers Frida Kahlo is a very revolutionary figure, and I don't think it kind of I don't to me it wasn't about like taming that or whitewashing it in any way, um, but just to look at Frida Kahlo, a big inspiration for me was a picture of her wearing a suit and tie, looking very, very masculine and
Mm.
like matcha, very stoic, in a family portrait in the early 1900s. Her father was a photographer, and she's dressed in a man's suit at the time, and so I was really inspired by that picture. So to me, the play became about Frida expressing themselves the way they wanted to express themselves, no matter what
Mm.
the society determined was right for her at the time. And that included an aspect of that gender fluidity that she
Mm.
was able to express in her dress. Um, and I, I've taken that show into schools. Sometimes people love that. Other times, and this is toured all around Oregon. When it first came out a few years back, there was a little bit of maybe some got to be considerate of the conservative families in the area. Maybe they don't want to have their kids learn about gender fluidity. So there was a little pushback for that. That I did talk to some of my superiors about in the theater company. But ultimately, I think if kids, I just think kids should be able to express themselves in any way they see fit. And if kids see that, I think it could be life changing for them.
Mm-hmm.
If I saw that when I was a kid, my approach to things is what would I like to see when I was young? What would I like to know when I was young? If I could see that, I think it would have made a really huge difference in my life.
Mm.
So, despite things being potentially controversial, I think it's well worth it. Sometimes you have to take people to those uncomfortable places. And, at the end of the day, we didn't lose any bookings or anything. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, that
Right.
worked out.
And
But
change itself like comes with controversy. No change has happened without opposition to it. So that is, yeah, definitely a part of the process. Okay, well, let's our last sort of thing I'm curious about, Ajay, is just what is your hope for Portland art and the future of it? Where are we headed? Where do you want to see us? What's the dream?
Yeah, well, just I guess coming out of this pandemic is a great opportunity to get together again, literally and figuratively. Let's all go out. Let's all get together. Let's have parties. Let's have shows. Let's have dances. Let's have music, and let's tell stories. And I think that's a great opportunity while everyone's excited about it and it's new, to actually have a shared experience. So my hope is that as we all create Portland together. Like Portland gets a lot of guff because of what it is from the rest of the country right now, which is terrible and kind of based off of untrue things. And I think we gotta fight that as well. We gotta come together. We gotta have pride. We gotta have take our city and love our city and love each other. And that's the way that I think that the arts can really actually thrive, and to just to find that Portland that we always have been, because it's the Portland that embraces diversity. It's that Portland that loves the weird, that loves the obscure, that's going to take chances, and just go for it. I have no doubt in my mind that Portland is not capable of that.
Well, thank you so much. I completely agree, and I'm just so glad to have had you on the podcast and have you share your perspective. And yes, is there a way we can follow your work online, or how do we keep up with what Ajay is up to next?
You follow Teatro Milagro, which is as a Facebook page and an Instagram page. It's the Milagro Theater, Milgro. You could also possibly see my work at Northwest Children's Theater and School. And PDX Playwrights is another organization that I'm on the administrative team for. If you have a play that you want to get read out loud, it's a great organization to get your play read and heard. And just keep an eye out for me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ajay.
Thank you so much, too.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Creating Portland with me, Pearson Kunz. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Creating PDX, or on our website, creatingpdx.com. This podcast was brought to you by Wolf and Thunder Productions and Golden Pride Productions. See you next time. Bye!